Class, our final section of Gilgamesh on page 86. Gilgamesh at last finds Enkidu. The last section. They descended into the city and were at once surrounded by the populace, who crowded close to them, grasping the hands of their king, embracing him, asking him questions. What new adventures had he undergone, and what new deeds would add to his glory? They looked at Urshanabi with great curiosity, wondering about his strange looks, fingering his garments from a faraway time in an almost forgotten place. A holiday was called, and again there was feasting throughout the city of Uruk. Ninsun had dressed herself in mourning during the absence of Gilgamesh. Now she put on garments of white and adorned herself in the rarest jewels. Gilgamesh, you have come back and you still live. Have you come face to face with your ancestor Utnapishtim? Have you found what you were seeking? Is your restless heart at last content? Gilgamesh told her about his wanderings while she sat wide-eyed. He told her of how he had crossed the mountains of Mashu and then come face to face with the great Shamash, the sun. He told her of how he had been treated kindly by the wine maiden, but ridiculed by his ancestor Utnapishtim the distant. Sadly, he spoke of the magic weed called the old become young again, and how a snake had seized it and taken it underground, and Urshanabi was his witness. I still have one more undertaking, dear Ninsun, Gilgamesh said to his mother. I must find Enkidu. O Gilgamesh, cease your running hither and thither. Stay in Uruk, my son. Take a wife. Have a child that you can lead by the hand. Such is the conformity of life. First, tell me what way to take, mother. How shall I direct my steps to find my friend? Patient Ninsun mounted to the roof of her palace. She prepared incense and addressed herself to the gods. Shamash, mighty Shamash, how shall my son direct his steps so that he may find his friend Enkidu? The god replied, say this to Gilgamesh, that when he goes toward the gate of the underworld, he must discard his clean garments, lest he arouse the envy of the dead. He must not wear sandals, lest their noise arouse the sleeping. And he must not carry a staff, nor a spear, lest he offend those who trembled before the staff, and anger those who fell before the spear. As to the path, I cannot say, for all my ways are the ways of light, and I do not know the realms of darkness. Let him ask some other god. Gilgamesh again said goodbye to his mother. Then, dressed in his royal tunic and golden sandals, with a spear on his back and a staff in his hand, he set out for Iker, which is the house of the god Enlil. Standing before the door, he cried, O father Enlil, listen to me, Gilgamesh, who weep day and night for my friend and brother Enkidu. How can I make my way to him? The god Enlil did not answer him even by so much of a word. He went to the house of the god Sin, who controlled the night and the moon. O father Sin, listen to me, Gilgamesh, who weep day and night for my friend and brother Enkidu. How can I make my way to him? The god Sin did not reply. Gilgamesh next went to Ibsu, the dwelling of the god Ea. O father Ea, he cried, direct me to my friend and brother Enkidu, for I weep for him day and night. When the god Ea heard his appeal, he spoke to the gatekeeper of the underworld. Gatekeeper, Gilgamesh wishes to speak to his friend Enkidu. Open a hole in the earth so that he may come out to meet Gilgamesh. Ea then directed Gilgamesh to the western field, where he would find the gate of the underworld. Gilgamesh went and ran and did not remove his royal tunic. When he came into the palace, when he came into the place, he found it was a wild steppe all overgrown with weeds and vines and full of swales where moss and bracken grew. As he approached, a hole opened in the earth. A wind rushed out of it, and following that, a strange form appeared. A man, all made of moss and weeds, of roots and trailing vines of arbutus, with its pale, sweet-scented waxen flowers. This was Enkidu. The two friends bounded toward each other, clasped hands, and embraced. They stood together and took counsel with one another. They talked about everything that they knew. I will tell you of my wanderings, O Enkidu. I will tell you about Utnapishtim, my ancestor, and how he came to be set among the immortals. But first, tell me how it is with you. Tell me about the underworld where you dwell. Sit down and weep, my friend, said Enkidu. Sit beside me and weep. For even as we talk together, my body drops away like an old garment. It is filled with dust. Gilgamesh sat down and wept for his friend. Then he inquired, how is it with kings in that world, Enkidu? Have you seen them? I have seen them, replied Enkidu. The crowns of kings are laid on a shelf, and their lot is that a serving of men. Well, how is it with the hero who died in battle? Have you seen him? I have seen him. His father and mother support his head, and his wife weeps over him. What of the man having a son? Have you seen him? I have seen him. One glass of water is his portion. What of the man who has had 2 sons? Have you seen him? I have seen him. He has a house of bricks over his head and a loaf of bread each day. What of the man who has had 3 sons? Have you seen him? I have seen him. He is daily refreshed from the water skins of the deep. What of the man who has had 8 sons? Have you seen him? I have seen him. His name is blazoned upon standards of red and gold. His house is of stone, and his image graven upon it. Daily he receives gifts and tributes. And what of the man who has no sons? Have you seen him? I have seen him. He lies unburied at the foot of the wall, and cast off crusts of bread are his portion. Gilgamesh then turned to Nergal, the gatekeeper, and pleaded with him in this way. Listen, gatekeeper, my brother Enkidu did not fall in battle. Neither did he die of sickness or venerable old age. The earth came up and seized him. The underworld took him in the prime of his youth. Therefore, release him. Let him return with me to Uruk of the Walls, that he may live out his life as a hero. But Nergal shook his head. It is decreed, O Gilgamesh, that the dead may not join the living. The living may only join the dead. As a representative of the underworld, O gatekeeper, grant this plea to me, for I weep daily for my friend Enkidu. O Gilgamesh, said the gatekeeper, you have come here dressed in a clean tunic, which has excited the envy of the dead. You have come wearing sandals, and thus aroused the sleeping from their sleep. And you carry a staff in your hand and have offended those who trembled before the staff. And your spear has angered those who fell by the spear. Therefore, I can't grant your plea. Gilgamesh grew fearful and turned to run from the field. He hesitated. After so many months of wandering and so much hardship, he had at last found Enkidu. Could he now desert him? Could he leave him behind and go back and live in the city? Had he found the life that he sought, or love, or welcome at the quay of Utnapishtim? He turned and walked toward his friend. He bowed. He fell into the dust among the weeds and bracken and the tailing vines of arbutus. Like a worm, He lay on his face for 7 days and 7 nights while Enkidu knelt beside him. He was dead, and the earth reached up and seized him. Thus Gilgamesh died. After all, a mortal's death. Even so, his life was not as an empty wind, for he made an everlasting name for himself. When he was gone, the populace of Uruk mourned him, but at the same time, they sang of his great deeds. Dancers acted out his adventures and his long quest. Singers set them to music, and poets told them. Sculptors carved his face and his friend's face in stone, and painters covered the walls of houses and temples with his great story. Scribes wrote it all down on tablets of clay or rock. Uruk and its walls slowly crumbled and melted into the earth. Other cities and other languages came into being, but everywhere was repeated the name of Gilgamesh. And when people heard the name and asked, "Who was this Gilgamesh?" they were answered, "He who saw everything, he who knew everything. He stood 7 cubits high. 2/3 of him was God, 1/3 of him was man. He was the most glorious of heroes, the most eminent of men. And Enkidu was his companion." Class, I really hope that you enjoyed this book as much as I did. Great job over the last couple of days, couple of weeks. You guys did an excellent job. Well done.